Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to today's informational webinar about the Amazon Future Engineer BootUp Computer Science Initiative for elementary students and teachers around the country. It looks like we've got a number of attendees with us today, and also all of our panelists. So we'll introduce the panelists as we go along. You'll notice that there's a control bar at the bottom of your screen that will allow you to ask and answer or ask questions either in the chat box or in a Q&A section. So please use those sections, and we'll make sure that we circle back around and answer any questions that anyone might have during the course of the webinar today. There's also a little hand raising button that you can click on to raise your hand, just to let me know that you're here. So maybe I'll call for a hand raise by someone just to know that you can hear me, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I see some hand raises, so great. We'll go ahead and get started. So very excited to talk a little bit more about this wonderful opportunity, the joint venture between Amazon Future Engineer and BootUp to offer high quality professional development to elementary teachers around the country, and to do that through districts that are interested in applying for the award of BootUp services. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the details of that as we go along. So today on the panel, I'm Clark Merkley, Executive Director of BootUp Professional Development. And we have with us Jack Oligas, who is the Senior Program Manager for Amazon Future Engineer, and also Dr. Jared O'Leary, who is the Director of Curriculum and Professional Development for BootUp Professional Development. And we'll have a chance to hear from them about Amazon Future Engineer, and also Dr. O'Leary will talk about the curriculum and also the professional development approach that we take. So I've got this quote up here by Mitch Resnick, and Dr. Resnick is the inventor of Scratch and Scratch Junior, which are two block-based coding programs that we use heavily, developed at MIT and Harvard. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but the things that we really like about Scratch and Scratch Junior is, one, they're free. So they're publicly accessible at no charge to the districts, the teachers, or the students that use them. And also they really lend themselves well to student interest-driven project-based learning. A really complicated way of saying that students can use their own interests and creativity to design projects of their own. And that engages their minds and engages their interest in learning how to do computer coding. So this quote from Mitch talks about how important it is to teach children to code when they're young. And gaining that literacy is much like we approach gaining other literacies, like learning to read and write, or learning basic mathematics. Not that our students are all going to grow up and be software engineers if they learn how to code, but it's another form of expression they can use to express themselves and to be creative, and as part of being a literate citizen in the world. The other thing about coding is that it offers a lot of great additional lessons that go along with learning how to code. And one of them is teaches algorithms, that set of instructions that the computer needs to run its programs. Students recognize this by the patterns that already exist in an elementary classroom. So if you go into most elementary classrooms, there's a set of instructions or classroom procedures up on the board about what students are supposed to do when they enter the classroom, such as take off their backpacks, sit at their desk, make sure that they're ready to go for the day. That's a form of an algorithm, and we also work with the students to create their own. When they're doing that, just like they would do with a science experiment or with an art project, is they think about what it is they want to create. And so it's incorporating those design concepts into what they're doing we're much like an architect who is drafting the plans for a building. They envision what that looks like and then go to work to figure that out. The other thing it does is it enhances a making mindset. And this is the T and the E in STEM. So the T is for technology and the E is for engineering. And often when students are learning how to code, they're strengthening both of those skills. They're using technology not just to consume the code, but to create it. And then using that creativity to create things of their own. So they could be unplugged lessons where they're not in front of a device, but they're learning coding and computational thinking and incorporating engineering concepts in that as well. It's very easy to see once we get into a coding lesson with a group of students how much it fuels their creativity. They're able to add characters of their own that they have relevant, it's relevant to them, so their family or their pets, the things they're interested in. And very often in coding classrooms, we do work in teams or in pairs, and it really fuels and boosts the students' productive collaboration. So I know that Jared's going to talk a little bit about this later on, so he can talk about our philosophical approach to the curriculum and how it enhances these various skills. So a little bit about BootUp Professional Development. We're a nonprofit, a 501c3 organization. And our goal is to get elementary students to learn computer science, coding, and computational thinking. But we know that the most effective way to do that is by empowering the teachers. And so we've developed a very robust and long-term overtime professional development sequence to make sure that the teachers that we're working with become confident and self-efficacious teachers of coding. Confident meaning they have enough confidence in their skills and abilities to help guide their students through the coding instruction itself, but also because they are working with students every day on other subjects, they have the ability to integrate what they're learning back into the regular curriculum day. And so we'll talk a little bit about integrating coding back into language arts and mathematics and social studies and art, science, and music. Some of the things that we do when we work with our partner districts is we work on a customized action plan specifically for that district. So they've got a strategic plan, something they want to accomplish. They have an idea of how they want to go about rolling this out to their schools and their teachers. So we develop a customized plan with those districts that has us coming in typically about 4 times a year. And it really depends on what the district's calendar can accommodate. But we like to come in periodically to provide additional professional development, reinforce what we've talked about earlier, and give the teachers plenty of time to practice and reflect on their teaching in between those sessions. The other thing that's really essential to long-term sustainability is our development of a district-level instructional coach. So we have a separate instructional coach course that is intended for someone at the district level typically, or a lead teacher who's going to be taking the role of training future teachers. We want to make sure, one, that they're going along and learning the professional development with us as we go, but second, that they end up at somewhere along the sequence co-facilitating with us and helping to train the teachers. One of the things that we do usually after the second professional development session is we do some model teaching. So one of our facilitators will get up in front of a real classroom full of students of one of the teachers going through professional development and demonstrate how a coding lesson is facilitated. It's very different than, a stand and deliver lecture. It's much more like being a facilitator or a guide to make it happen. And sometimes, usually it's always important for teachers to see how it is done by someone who has experience doing it so that they can then reflect on those lessons. The other thing that we'll do with our partner districts is we help them develop a PLC, or a professional learning community, of the teachers of coding that are going through the professional development. So as I mentioned at the top, and this is the reason why all of you are here, is to learn more about the Amazon Future Engineer BootUp Elementary Computer Science Initiative. where we're partnering together to provide computer science to support elementary teachers throughout the country. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the questions that have come up and address those as we go along. But we've found that our approach is effective in very large school districts. We've worked with the City of New York public schools, all the way down to very small. So we've worked with some very small remote rural districts in Colorado and Wyoming and in Utah, and also some rural districts in Iowa. And so we know that this has applicability and utility for districts large and small, and helps the teachers achieve that confidence. So at this time, I want to turn some time over to Jack Oligas, who is the program manager for Amazon Future Engineer, and have her talk a little bit about the Amazon Future Engineer initiative.
Thanks so much, Clark. Yeah, as he mentioned, I'm Jack Oligas, and I lead our elementary programs for Amazon Future Engineer. Thanks so much to all of you for joining today. Really excited to be able to talk to all of you. So just to give you a little bit of a background about our program. So we officially launched in the fall of 2018. And we are a childhood to career program, and we aim to increase the accessibility of computer science education to students, especially those from underserved and underrepresented communities across the country. So within the K through 12 space, we focus on providing computer science education, professional development, curriculum, and courses to districts and schools across the US. And then in the college space, we provide 100 students each year with $40,000 scholarships, and then an automatic internship at Amazon after their first year of college. So as you can see, we really build out our programs to provide opportunities for students to really get inspired in their elementary years and build out those 21st century skills, and then have avenues available to them to persist in computer science through to a career in the field. So we want students to have those resources available to them to help them build their best futures, whatever they choose that to be. So we're super excited to be able to team up with BootUp on this, and really hope we can work with all of you in the future to bring these essential skills to your students.
Great, thanks, Jack, for that introduction. And I will say it's a pleasure and an honor to be able to work with Amazon Future Engineer on this project, because they do see the need of getting this literacy into the hands of children early. And we know that particularly for underserved communities and for our girls and for underrepresented minorities in the field, getting early exposure and gaining interest and confidence in these skills will help them remain interested when they reach elective classes in junior high and high school, and then hopefully go on to higher education and careers in the field. So I want to introduce Dr. Jared O'Leary, who is a Director of Curriculum and Professional Development at BootUp, and have him talk a little bit about the philosophy that surrounds the curriculum and also the professional development. So Jared, I'll turn some time over to you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. All right, is everyone able to see that? It says BootUp.
Yep, I see some hands raised,
Okay.
so I think they're
Sweet.
seeing it, so.
Okay, so first thing that I want to talk about is the free content. So this stuff that I'm about to show you is accessible on our website. So you just go to the curriculum and go to Scratch Junior. So right now we have over 50 projects for Scratch Junior, which is our K2 strand, which is great for early or pre-readers. So there are a ton of projects in here and some lesson plans. Now for the older kids, for grades 3 and above, when you click on this one, it takes you to our Scratch content. And right now there are 40 projects for Scratch that go from relatively simple to more complicated. Now on here, there's a second set of resources that is student-facing resources. And then there are some lesson plans. Now let me show you the lesson plans. So in the lesson plan, when you click on one of them, like the Amazing Maze game, It has the generic stuff that you find in every lesson plan, such as the objectives and standards, and we've got them as both statements and questions for the process objectives and the product objectives. We show our alignment with the national standards in terms of what is a standard that is a primary or main standard and what is reinforced. We do the same thing for the practices and concepts that are found in the K-12 computer science framework. And then we have some other resources such as what are the blocks used in this project, what are some of the vocabulary words, and each of them includes several different definitions for the vocabulary words, so you can explain them in different ways, as well as some connections. So for example, this project, the maze game, is great for connecting with math because it talks about X and Y coordinates. Now, when you get into the actual project itself, there are a lot of resources in terms of preparation for things that you can do to dive into Scratch and learn a little bit more. And then a very detailed outline of here's how you teach this particular lesson for every single one of the sections. So for instance, this one, number 4, the create the levels. On the left side, it shows you step by step everything I would have done when I was in the classroom to demonstrate how to do this thing, as well as some general suggestions on how to facilitate this process. Or here are some example formative questions that you can ask while kids are working on this particular section of the project. And it repeats that for each one of the steps. Then it finally gets into our assessment suggestions. And in our assessments, we always give 3 different types of assessments. One is summative, one is formative, and the other is ipsative. If you're unfamiliar with that, there are resources to help you learn more. And then finally, the last part of every one of the lessons are some extensions for learning. So for example, project extensions. These are great for kids who are moving at a quick pace and want to dive deeper, or if you have teachers who are able to move or rather spend more time on the different projects. We also have suggestions for how could you differentiate this to make this project easier or harder, as well as debugging exercises. So the debugging exercises are kind of like the puzzles that you find in other platforms, but it's situated within a project. So in this particular maze one, I present an example of how, why doesn't it switch to the next level when we touch the goal, which is at the end of the level. So the students would see this and click on it, and it would take them to the actual project, and they try and solve it. And then the teacher has access to the actual solution. So I explain what needs to be fixed and then actually give a picture showing how to do that. The lesson plans also link to unplugged resources. So there's over 100 lesson plans and resources that we point to. And then we have a bunch of reflection questions or ipsative questions that can be asked at the end of each lesson. Now, on the student-facing side of things, the Coda Resources buttons on our Scratch page takes you to something that looks like this. So there are 4 main sections. So one is the project sequence that shows you how to recreate the maze game. The next one is showing you how to dive deeper, so the project extensions. And then it's got the debugging exercises, again, just the questions, no answers. And then at the end, there are like the example project, so you can actually go in and remix and see all the code that I used in mine, as well as some extra videos and resources. Now, when a kid clicks on any one of these, it actually takes them to a slide deck that has a video walkthrough that shows how to do stuff. So for example, when I play this one is me demonstrating, okay, here are some different ways that you can use player controls to create your game. And so I walk through several different examples of how to do that in a short video. And then underneath each one of the videos, it's a good freeze frame, by the way, I've got a summary of each one of the things that I demonstrated in here. So the different options and the different steps. So this is a very quick way to kind of go through and go, oh, what was it that I needed to do for this part? Oh, I needed to learn more about X and Y coordinates or whatever. In addition, in each one of the Coda resources, there's also a link to a folder that has more generic Scratch tips. So here's a bunch more. As an example, one of them is showing how to use the pen blocks. So this one asks, how can we draw a square? And if kids go to the next slide, it gives you a hint of how many steps and a number of repeats there are. And then it finally shows you the answer. And then as you get further down in this particular one, it shows you, okay, how can we combine this to create something interesting? Like combining the code for a square, the code for a triangle, and then simply adding in 4 new blocks, you get this really cool design. So in addition to those generic Scratch tips, we also have connections to the microbit. So going back to the maze game, here's me demonstrating how to use a microbit to make it so that I can control Scratchcat by simply tilting the device to move left, like I am right now. And then when I tilt it up, it makes it so Scratchcat moves up. And again, after each one of the videos, it kind of walks through, here are the different things that you need to use for the code in order to create something like that. Now, the nice thing about this approach is kids can work on these at their own pace. So for example, I don't know about you, but when I was in the classroom, I had high migration in and out of the district. So every week there'd be somebody new in the classrooms that I was working with. So kids would join in midway through the year and they'd be like, okay, the class is maybe on like project 6, but they should probably start on project 1. Well, these resources, because there's the video and visual walkthroughs, it shows how they can actually go through these at their own pace. In addition, right now, because there's 40 Scratch projects, let's say you have 40 kids in your class, which would be a lot, you could have them all working on 40 different projects. So they could go through these at their own pace. And that approach is referred to as rhizomatic learning, which is an educational approach developed by Deleuze and Guattari, who are some educational philosophers. So everything that I've showed so far is 100% free. You can access it right now. You don't need to sign up for anything, nothing like that. So now let me actually show you some of the PD. So this is somewhere in our second PD, our second one. So what we like to do is we like to kind of gradually scaffold in a variety of resources and pedagogies to kind of maximize student interest in learning. And our focus is on developing sustainability by teaching a person to fish. So I'll kind of demonstrate how we do that. So one of them is we like to situate our learning. So this is heavily influenced by researchers like G, who talks about how you shouldn't just like lecture on what something is, but instead you should have people engage in it and then kind of unpack it after you've gone through some processes and work through some things. So for example, in this slide, we talk about reverse engineering. We model how to do this. So we play both of these videos and loop them. And teachers during our professional development will have to try and recreate the exact movements of one or two of the sprites that they see in the videos. After they go through this process, we then share some resources for reverse engineering and learning more about it, as well as paired programming, which were two of the things that we model in this particular slide. Now, you'll notice at the bottom we have notes, and Clark mentioned training some instructional coaches. While the instructional coach is in the session, we have some suggestions and some questions to help get them to think deeper about the things that we're modeling in each one of the processes. In addition, after we model a lesson or a group of lessons, we then use TPAC, which is a framework that's useful for kind of unpacking what was the technological, like the platform side of things, Scratch Junior or Scratch, what was the pedagogical knowledge, so how did we teach this, and what was the CS content knowledge that we did. So after each one of these, we talk about each one of the TPAC sections and kind of unpack them in relation to what we modeled and then what we've done in the past as well. In addition, we also talk about computational thinking. So we ask, how did we use abstraction or algorithms or decomposition or pattern recognition in each one of the projects that we just engaged with in the class, or in the PD rather. Okay, so after we have had those discussions, we then like to spend a decent amount of time throughout each PD, twice at least, talking about, okay, how do we integrate this into your classroom? Because you're the expert in your subject area, and we are going to kind of walk you through some potential suggestions for how to integrate this into your class. And so we have our discussion forum, which is found on our website, and anyone can access it. And there are hundreds of posts on, okay, how do I integrate this into my ELA class, or my math class, or music, or whatever. So we like to do that twice per PD. And I'm skipping through some stuff. And then at the end of each one of our PDs, we like to talk about different things that we modeled in particular or emphasize in the sessions. So for example, we talk about project-based learning in PD2, and then we also talk about assessment and share the assessment resources document. Now, across our PDs, we then go through a lot of different things related to TPACs. So at the top of this particular document, which I think Abby is pasting in the chat section, This shows all the stuff that we talk about related to the technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge you would need to know in order to engage in the projects that we model, as well as the different themes that we actually unpack in each one of the professional development sessions towards the end. In addition to all this stuff, we also provide on-site model teaching and peer coaching, as well as preparing the district instructional coach through a course and then through some like personal coaching and whatnot. Now, that is the paid stuff, or what would be free with this grant, essentially. We also have some free professional development resources for those who just want to learn more. So if you go to our professional development section on our website and go to resources, it takes you here. So there's a podcast, there's our YouTube channel, some integration studios, lesson plans, and some unplugged resources. So that's a very quick overview about the general approach and some of the things that kind of inform what we do in both the curriculum and the professional development.
All right. Thanks, Jared. Let me see if I can bring back the presentation that we were on here. Here we go. So as Jared was going through and talking about the curriculum resources and the professional development, some of you may have been saying to yourself, I will never be able to follow that. I will never be able to get that. One of the really cool things that we've observed as we've worked with school districts and worked with teachers of coding, and I'll use that term very broadly because we've trained certified classroom teachers who are already teaching all the subjects to their elementary students. And we've also trained ed techs and media techs and instructional techs, some of whom are not certified teachers, but have daily or weekly contact with the students. And all of them have been equally successful in going from really knowing nothing, even essentially. I mean, they can turn on the computer, they can do some things on the computer, but not knowing a lot about coding to become very confident teachers of coding. And we do it in such a way that it is a very easy to understand. It's not intimidating. So a lot of those things that you saw that Jared was going through, once the teachers have gone through professional development, they can understand how to use those resources, and they're just tremendous resources for the teachers and the students. So a little bit more about why teach computer science in elementary school. We're preparing students for their future. And you know, whether that's a technical, a STEM, or just about any, it's important for them to understand how the world around them works. And the world around them is awash in code. So every device they use, every appliance they use these days, every car they drive, every financial transaction they're involved with, every time they go online and search for something, behind all of that is code. So it helps them understand that digital world and helps them communicate with others, no matter what their future career opportunities might look like. And we often say when we're talking with administrators and teachers, we're preparing these elementary students for careers that don't yet exist. So if you think 10 years ago, was anyone talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and Bitcoin and cybersecurity? They were very obscure topics in, you know, certain academic areas, but now they're front and center and they represent employment opportunities. The really exciting thing is we know that when we start with young students as early as pre-K, they can't even read yet, but they can code. They're much less intimidated than if we wait until they're older. And so we like to start with this literacy at the same time they're acquiring other literacies. And then one of the key areas of focus for the Amazon Future Engineer BootUp Elementary Science Initiative is to close equity gaps around the country. So there are a lot of students that may not otherwise have access to resources like this. And there are teachers that are working with those students that need that support that comes through, you know, good quality professional development. And so this grant opportunity makes that possible for districts to apply and receive BootUp services at no cost to the district. And all of these things, boost the children's creativity, boost their self-confidence as they acquire new skills, and helps them develop a growth mindset and persistence, or what's sometimes called grit. And as Jared talked about some of the debugging activities, every student in coding learns that the program doesn't always work the way you want it the first time. In fact, it never does. And so they've got to go back and adjust things so that the computer will do what they're wanting it to do. Those same skills can transfer over to mathematics and to science and to language arts. And so the children don't have the attitude like, I'm just going to give up because I'm not good at this. They recognize the need to just go back and fix something or review their work and see what needs to be changed and make those adjustments. So I want to talk briefly about the application.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yeah,
I can't
please.
see the slides. I'm wondering if the others can.
I can't either.
I can't.
Well, you can't either. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I'm not sharing. Here we go.
Excellent. Thank you.
No, no. That one we shifted back and forth.
I broke it. Sorry.
That's right. Let's see if I can get back to where we were. Yeah, I apologize for the delay.
Well, just so everyone knows, we'll be placing a recording of the webinar on the application platform page. And I'll include a link in the chat. And we also have another upcoming webinar this Friday and several next week, which we'll put on that homepage as well.
Well, I may ask one of the others that has access to the control panel to bring that back up. So it seems how somehow I've minimized my control panel. So if anyone else can bring that up, that would be great. Oh, here we go. Maybe this is it. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So I will, for those that missed that last section, let me just go back and, as Abby said, this will be recorded and made available for anyone after. Talking through why it's important to teach computer science at elementary school level, and you can see the bullet points there. So can everyone see the application slide?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So if you go to the BootUp website, at the top there is right at the banner section, there is an Apply Now button. In that, and I'll kind of play this little video so you can kind of see this. You go up to the upper right-hand corner and click on, now let me go back a little bit here. Sorry about that. So if you go, you have to click on Apply. You've got to register your account so that you can come back into it later on, and then it guides you through a series of questions, gives you some background information about the application process itself. The application is intended to be very easy and not terribly time-consuming to get through. You'll notice that it does require a superintendent sign-off as you go through this process, and that there's a very simple process for clicking on that link to get a recommendation from the superintendent. And then it'll send an email to the superintendent asking her or him to sign off on the initiative. And there's a couple of open text fields where you can describe what it is you want to accomplish in your district. And since we have Abby Funabiki, the Associate Executive Director for BootUp on the line, do you any other comments you want to make about the application process itself?
No, just that it's a short and easy application process with 3 sections, 2 quantitative sections, and then 1 narrative section with 500-word answers. So if there's anything you want us to know, please include it in the narrative section.
Okay. So a couple of some frequently asked questions that we've received, and also there's some others that you may have posed there in the chat section, and we'll address those as well. So first of all, how much does it cost? So I was on a conference call with the district the other day, and I think they asked me this question 4 or 5 different times. So if you're awarded the opportunity to work with us, our services, BootUp services, come at no cost to the district. So typically, if a district engages us either with their own funds or through a state grant or otherwise, they're paying for our services, but with the generous support of Amazon Future Engineer, those services are at no cost to the district. And so that leads to the next question is, are there any hidden costs? And because we use free platforms like Scratch Junior and Scratch and Unplug lessons, and all of those lessons, the student-facing lessons are available at no charge on our district, there are no hidden costs, at least from our side of things. But I do want to be open and transparent about district costs that might be incurred. And I say might be because it's not necessarily required. But the district is responsible for hosting us at their facilities, and then to the extent they want to offer snacks or meals or other things to the teachers attending the training, that would be at district expense. And then we also often see districts that will offer a stipend or a small salary increase or something to the teachers that go through the training. But that's completely up to the district. So the grant or the award is only for BootUp services. It's not a cash award or a cash grant to the district to use for other things. And kind of related to that, if you need additional devices or you want to incorporate robotics into your instruction, those expenses would be the district's expenses and would not be part of this initiative. So the next question is, do we have to include all of our elementary schools in the initiative or all the grades? Because you'll notice in the language in the application, it talks about a district-wide implementation or a district-wide initiative. The key there is we want the district administration to be aware of it and be supportive, because we know that when teachers are learning something new and trying something different and incorporating computer science into this classroom day, that they need that administrative support and encouragement. So that's what we mean by district-wide, but the district plan is customized to each district. The intent of this initiative is to reach underserved and high need schools. So if you said, well, we have 70% free and reduced lunch, but we only want to offer this program to our non-Title I schools, that would not meet the spirit of the grant. So we want to make sure that these opportunities are getting to those students and teachers that are working with those students that otherwise wouldn't have opportunities like this. The next question is, who can we select as the teachers of coding to receive the professional development? That's up to the district. As I mentioned, we've trained certified classroom teachers, which has been very, very effective because they can very easily integrate computer science back into what they're already teaching. But we've also trained media techs or librarians who see the students on a weekly rotation or a bi-weekly rotation through the library, where instead of teaching keyboarding or digital arts or graphic design or something, have incorporated coding instruction into that. So that will also be a decision that's made by the district based on how you think this can be most successfully be implemented. And along with that, because it is a district customized program, the district can select the dates for the training. The award lasts for 3 years, and typically we're making 8 separate professional development visits and often in conjunction with an additional day for model teaching and peer coaching and other things. But those dates are selected by the district, and you may have a set professional development days on your calendar that we can accommodate. And so we'll work with you, and you'll tell us when you'd like to have those. And then the last one is what happens if we're not awarded. So let's say you submit an application for the grant and you're not awarded. It's still really important for us to see your expression of interest, because we often become aware of either state grants or some federal grants or some other sources of funding that might allow that to still take place. And knowing that you're interested and that the vision is there and it just wasn't granted this time around will give us information that will be important to help you in the future. And a couple of other questions that have come up that I want to address really quickly. So we've had questions about whether private schools can apply for this program, and the answer is unfortunately no. This is for public school districts. They could be charter schools within a public school district, but if they're freestanding charter schools or private schools, unfortunately this is not the application for that. Another question has come up about whether programs outside of the United States can apply for this opportunity, and the answer to that is also no. So this is intended for US-based public school districts primarily. So I think what I'll do now is I'll open this up for any other questions, so including any of those that came up in the Q&A portion or in the chat box. So and then what I could also do, let me do that here right now, is open up the lines for anybody that would like to ask a question. And you can ask it of anyone. So any one of the people that have been on the webinar today. Or Abby, if you saw something in the Q&A that you'd like to relay.
People are welcome to reach out to me if they have application questions. My email is abby@bootuppd.org, and I'll put that in the chat. For districts who are interested in learning more, you can reach out to Clark, and I'll put his email in the chat as well. And we did have a question about an error on the application site. So I put a link for the SurveyMonkey Apply help desk. I might suggest refreshing or logging out and logging in, but it sounds like it might be a glitch.
Okay.
I'm also wondering if a district firewall might be preventing access.
Yeah, so if you're having trouble logging in at all, it may be talk to your district IT administrator and see if you can get permission to do that.
Yeah, if you're still having trouble, feel free to email me, and we'll figure out a way to get your application in.
So Todd Miller asked if being in a private school, if they're still eligible to use the free resources shown on the website. Yes, of course, anyone can use it. You actually don't need to even sign up for any of the curriculum resources.
Yeah, and Jared's very modest when we talk about this, but we like to say that our curriculum is being used on every continent in the world except Antarctica, and we're still waiting to find the elementary students or some Antarctic study base somewhere that would use this. But yeah, people all over the world are using our curriculum and very happy about that. So, all right. So you've got the slide up there. Any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us. As we mentioned, a recording of this webinar will be made available to everyone, because I know we had some people that needed to leave early. And so please come back to it. There's also another webinar on Friday, and then next Wednesday and Friday as well, if you have other members of your team that would like to jump in and learn more. Or if you have any questions that were unanswered, please get those to us and we'll address them on those future webinars. So any last minute questions that anyone might have? All right. Well, we thank you so much for your participation today, and hopefully you've learned some things that will help inspire you to submit an application. We'd love to see as many applications as possible and be able to make this opportunity available to districts all over the country, large and small. So thanks again for your attendance, and thank you, Jack and Jared and Abby, for joining in on the webinar today. And we'll look forward to hearing from you on your applications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.